guy drink a beer with is Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports Network. Appreciate him. He's with us on most every Wednesdays in the 5 o'clock hour. Zach, great setup at where you are, where you do your broadcast every afternoon. So, Bill Belichick in college football.
Crazy. Still can't believe it. Even though for the last day or two, I thought it was going to happen because of how late in the process UNC was. And if it wasn't Bill, then where were they going to go? With John Sumrall saying he's going to stay at Tulane, there just wasn't a name that was out there. So I thought UNC, since Bill was interested, had no choice but to hire him. And it's going to be fascinating to see how it's going to go. The floor is bowl eligibility. Like, they'll be bowl eligible with just the coaching of Bill Belichick. The ceiling. I could see him getting maybe down the road. I know it's only a 3-year deal, and we'll see what the roster looks like and all the NIL money that gets increased. An ACC championship game. And I'm not going to say they sit there and say that they're going to win it necessarily. Let's, see, but it's not crazy to suggest that Bill could go have success in college. Anyone thinking he'll win a national championship, please. No one in the ACC is winning a national championship, so let's stop with that.
Well, not anytime, probably soon, Zach, given the state of all of them. But North Carolina's not won the ACC since the early 80s. I mean, so this is a football program that has been an abject failure for 40 years, for a generation or more. And I don't know if it'll work out, but it's a huge swing, so nothing else has. Might as well do something different.
And also, hey, Larry Fedora had a little early success. I think he had like a 10 or 11 win season. Then obviously it got real ugly. You call back Mac Brown. Mac Brown takes the job. He restored them to a stable spot where they're winning 6 to 8 games every year. Bill will walk in. He'll win his 7 games right away, I would imagine. Maybe north of that. Let's see what the roster looks like. And here's something I will say. There's going to be a lot of people, and it's amazing because I heard this on ESPN. And you would think that guys like Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp, who I like a lot, that they would be able to make this point. I heard them the other day talk about, Bill's not going to be real. Like, I can't imagine Bill walking into a living room. Well, Deion Sanders, I know he has a great personality. He's not in kids' living rooms. They come to him, right? So you'll have others do, I don't want to say your dirty work, but that's basically what it is. They'll do the tough work. They'll do the recruiting. And when a kid wants to take a visit, they'll go and they'll meet with Bill Belichick in his office, just like how the kids in Colorado go meet with Coach Prime. But I was talking to Channing Crowder earlier today. And Channing Crowder, I said to him, former players are going to want their sons to play for Bill Belichick because they're going to get professional coaching and they're going to get ready for the NFL. And that's the pitch. Hey, you want to go play in the NFL? Well, I'm a 6-time Super Bowl champion. I'm Bill Belichick. Kiss the rings. I'm one of the greatest coaches of all time. My coaching may not be for everybody. I'm going to be tough on you, but you're going to be in the NFL, and I have a lot of contacts in the NFL because I was the standard for 20 years. And if that's what you want and you truly want that, as long as there's NIL money there, I don't see why you would be running away from that situation just because Bill's never coached in college before.
Zach, this isn't black and white, or it doesn't have an exact answer. I was just kind of kicking this around in my head as we were seeing all these coaching changes. You just see a Gus Malzahn step down out of a head coaching position. Now, granted, time was wearing out on him in Orlando anyways, but just he decided, I'm a football coach. I don't want to be doing all this other nonsense that we have to do nowadays. And I remember a conversation after a couple of big-time assistants left for the NFL of man, are they running guys off now? Do you think maybe college football is running off the traditional guys in some ways or becoming less desirable, but also now opening up its arms to others that might not otherwise have been interested in college football because now you can go in the portal and you can put things together a lot quicker than just sitting down talking to mom and pop like the good old days?
I think you're on to something. Chip Kelly, I know that it seemed like he was on the end and the outs of UCLA for all those years, and he kept on winning 7 or 8 games. He left the head coaching job to go be an offensive coordinator at Ohio State. We saw Hafley say, I'm done as a head coach at BC. I'm going to go be the DC of the Green Bay Packers. So I think just with the money structure that it is now, where it is NIL, it allows for a true CEO of the program. And you guys know this. There's a lot of companies that have a CEO that their CEO, he's doing a lot of the work, but he's not doing the toughest work. And the recruiting is the toughest work. But if it comes down to, for a lot of these kids, what's the dollar amount? I don't think Bill Belichick, to get a kid to go to UNC, needs to be in their living room. I just think he has to eventually meet with them at one time. And as long as the Benjamins are there, that's what a lot of these kids just care about. And I don't fault kids for that, because they could benefit off their name, image, and likeness.
Did Deion's 2 years at Colorado influence anyone else who might do what he did or what Belichick's going to do, or am I giving him too much credit?
I think what the Coach Prime kind of last 2 years shows us is unconventional for these schools that are not Alabama, right? They're not your big time programs, Ohio State, Georgia, whatever the big school, Texas, you guys all know the big schools. If you want to be relevant and you want to have a chance to catch lightning in the bottle, you could do something like that. And I said with Coach Prime when he was at Jackson State, if I was Auburn, I would have hired him. I wanted to see Coach Prime go to the SEC. So Boulder, right? We haven't talked about them for college football outside of how much they've just been terrible for 20 years. Now all we do is talk about them because you have a big name, relevant coach who the bar was set so low and he exceeded expectations. Now, Bill doesn't have the personality of Coach Prime, but we know the name of Bill Belichick, the NFL legend, the royalty that he is. And now he goes to college where he'll be an old school coach, as he's always been, just like how Deion's an old school coach. He'll be the CEO of the program. He's going to coach those kids like they've never been coached before. And he'll have other guys figure out, right, the recruiting, the main bulk work of it in the transfer portal. So, yeah, I think it's fair to, I'm not saying directly Bill's doing this because Deion did it, but it has allowed a school like UNC to say, hey, we don't need a college football lifer or someone that, I know Deion was coaching for a few years in college. I just don't think you need to do that necessarily. I think you could go outside the box.
I for one, think he has a ton of personality because he's got a 24-year-old girlfriend. So something's going on there.
Which let me tell you this. I think she's on the hot seat. Bill could be going to these sorority parties.
Co-ed carousel.
I'm just saying, imagine Belichick. Toga. Be interesting.
Yeah, look, hey, this is, not loyal. You don't have to be loyal like you did to Matt Patricia. Like this.
You know what? That's when it's a disaster. Mm-hmm. I would imagine Patricia's doing something. Yeah. But if he's coaching the offensive side of the ball, that's when you're a recruit. You say, Bill, what drugs are you doing? Come on.
Zach, what do you think about the opening at West Virginia and where they could go, which could be at any second? Now, it appears they might have somebody that they've picked, but do you like going back home again with Rich Rodriguez, or do they need to be a little bit more today?
I think that's a program that could be like a sleeping giant, man, especially with the McAfee influence and the McAfee connection. That's a program that could get a lot of national play. You're in the Big 12, right? There's no team. We just saw Arizona State, right? We're in the Big 12. They were picked dead last before the season started. So I do think West Virginia could be a really fun job that will have a lot of money if you get a rock star kind of guy. I'm fine with Rich Rod. I would have no problem.
Pete Damble is saying right now that it's heading that way.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah, and yeah. Brian Hartline I saw interviewed, which I think would be a fine hire, and that would be damaging to Ohio State. So I have no problem. I saw the Rich Rod stuff last week. I have no problem if it ends up being Rich Rod.
Zach, Phil Snow. And Matt Rhule because of the connections. And Phil was in our studio one time for a wonderful sit-down interview.
The Godfather.
Yes. Is this a desperation move by Matt to bring back the fellas? I know Phil Snow knows football, but what does this do for them?
So I was a little surprised Tony White left just because, and I don't know everything that happened, but the way that Tony White was being talked about last year, he could basically be a head coach. So Norvell needed help at Florida State. Terrence Knighton, I think, is a big loss as well. But Phil Snow is is Matt's confidant, right? That's the guy he trusts the most. So, that's the reason why, Matt ended up going to Baylor, and he didn't end up going to Oregon because, from what I was told, Phil Snow basically told him, you got to go on a plane to recruit everywhere in Oregon. In Baylor, you just, get in your car and you drive. And they thought that was more appealing. So that was part of the decision-making process. I have, if Matt trusts Phil Snow, I got no problem with it. But, hey, Dana Holgorsen, the fact that they were able to retain him, I thought that was big as well because the offense did look better with him. So I think they'll be fine. It all comes down to Raiola, and they got to get more talent around Raiola. So I'm not freaking out over the coaching selections and stuff like that. Matt wants to bring back Phil Snow. Hey, no problem with that whatsoever. The guy's a really damn good football coach.
All right, so the playoff, the standings released, of course, on Sunday early afternoon. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? Or, just your overall feedback. It's been 4 days or 3 days.
Yeah, it's all hypocritical. Let's be real. Like, I'm about to tell you, I'm happy that they were at least consistent in terms of they didn't reward teams that weren't in the conference championship games, and then they didn't take away from teams that lost their conference championship games. So even with that being said, do I think Texas, do I think Penn State are true 5 and 6 seeds? I don't. I think, and I don't even love Ohio State. They could lose to Tennessee, but I think Ohio State is better than Penn State. Heck, they beat them this year. So I look at Texas, I look at Penn State. I don't think there's any two coaches under more pressure just in terms of the matchups than Sark and then James Franklin. If they're not in the semifinal, man, that's an embarrassment. And hey, I think Arizona State or Boise State, one of those schools are going to pick off either Texas or Penn State, and one of those schools will get into the semifinal and the Final Four. But those are some of my first reactions. Alabama, do I think Alabama would beat SMU? Yes. I also thought Alabama would beat South Carolina. I also thought Alabama would beat Oklahoma. In a 12-team playoff, I said this to you guys last week, I don't think anyone gets screwed. Alabama didn't do enough to clearly state that they belong in the college football playoff. You could think Bama's better than SMU, and so do I, but it doesn't mean Alabama deserved to get in, and I was fine pretty much for the most part with the 12 teams that the committee ended up picking.
Yeah, you got to earn it a little bit. I mean, you can't just claim birthright status. I know that you are, president of the Ryan Day fan club, and that after you leave us, you're going to get on the subway and go to the New York chapter of it. That all being said, if he loses this game to Tennessee at home in the playoff, would you want to be him for the next 12 months?
I wouldn't want to be him before. Here's what I'll say. So Friday, I'm doing Army-Navy Radio Row. So we're doing our show live. USAA puts on a tremendous event. I know Urban Meyer is going to be doing his podcast. I want to get Urban Meyer on the show. I'm going to try to get him on the show because I saw Urban Meyer put out a statement the other week that he's done coaching. He's not interested. I know his name's been attached to the Ohio State job, and he believes in Ohio State. I just want to tell Urban Meyer on the show this. Urban, I saw your statement. I respect your statement, but you're telling me that in this hypothetical world, if Ohio State got rid of Ryan Day and they called you up and begged you to come back, you're not going back to Ohio State? For a guy that's addicted to coaching, a football lifer, I get it. The NIL could be a headache. The transfer portal could be a headache. You're telling me with how it ended in Jacksonville, Urban Meyer wouldn't take the Ohio State job? So I hope I get that opportunity to, say that to him coming up on Friday. We'll see if he ends up coming up on the show.
And I'm sure he'll be totally honest with you.
Yeah, he's
it's just the picture of honesty.
I don't know if you watched the end of the Cowboys game, which, of course, is always a glorious thing. Sometimes like the fourth quarter against Washington was bizarre. They've been in those situations before with Leon Lett, which was a famous snow game against the Dolphins, but that was a Super Bowl team. Can you imagine being a fan of the Cowboys and they take you and they just tease you constantly, and then there's that play at the end of that game? Yeah,
so I understand it was terrible, and it can't happen, but the Cowboys season's already over. So I at least appreciate how tough those guys were playing. And Micah Parsons, who sometimes says some stupid things, I at least appreciated his emotion because for a star like that, it's easy to start making business decisions and not care. He's caring and he's wanted to win this game like it was their Super Bowl, and they've been out of it. And this is a bad Bengals team as well because their defense can't stop anybody. So I was fine with the effort. Just at the end of the game, it's one of those things. We've seen so many ways teams lose games this year where they invent new ways how to lose them. And it's impressive. Like, look, every time Kansas City wins this year, it feels like there's some wild ending, whether it was the division doink, as Tirico said, what happened with the Raiders a few weeks ago with the botched snap, the field goal that got blocked up against the Broncos. There's been a lot of sloppy NFL ball this year, but there's been a lot of craziness at the end of these games.
Kansas City drives me crazy watching them because I know what the ending's going to be.
They're going to win.
They're going to win.
The moment the Chargers hit that field goal, I said this is over.
Yeah.
Touchdowns, not field goals. Like, I know that sometimes you got to kick the field goal. Like,
they had to kick it there.
You had to kick the field goal there. But, I mean, I know Jim Harbaugh knew this. As soon as he kicked it, he was like, crap.
Yeah.
But even so, all you had to do was only allow a field goal.
Yeah.
No, all they had to do was allow a field goal. And at that moment, it's like the fourth down play to get them close, or the third down play to get them closer, because they had the game-winning field goal, so you couldn't allow a field goal, but how they made it easier for them to then bleed the clock at the end of the game, and it's like you had Mahomes basically there, and you couldn't tackle him, and he throws a first down to this is the Patriots. I'm a Patriot fan. 20 years, this is what I saw. And the Patriots had cleaner products, but they had some sloppy games that they won, and the other team just urinated on themselves at the end of the game. That's what happens.
Yeah, and Mahomes always has a 10 or 12-yard scramble in a final drive, and he had one in that final drive. I was watching the game. I was at an airport in Tampa. And I said, there it is. There he goes. They're gonna win the game. Zach, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. As always, thanks for your time.
You got it, guys. Thanks. Be well.
Infinity Sports Radio Network talk show host Zach Gelb with us.